Hello, all. My name is Aaliyah, and I'm happy to introduce cross cultural approaches to navigating digital innovation and digital disparity as we begin Module 9 of Professor Tracy Hall's Cross Cultural Approaches to Leadership. Please allow me to introduce my group members before we begin. I am joined today by Alex, Josh, and Natalie as we examine how digital access advocacy helps shape the future of libraries, access, and information. In 2015, in one of his final posts to social media, please pause to take a moment and read. John Lewis foreshadowed the internet as a space for digital democracy, protections, and freedoms as he points to net neutrality protections as a vehicle for this movement. Civil rights leader John Lewis invites us to treat digital access with the same urgency as civil rights struggles. So, as you'll see outlined in this presentation, two core ideas are presented: digital innovation as a tool for liberation, and digital disparity as a barrier to determining who has a voice, who has an opportunity, and who has visibility in the digital age.
What is digital disparity? Digital technologies have evolved quickly, but without access and education, they continue to be a privileged resource. Without community support, these innovations create a stratified community and workforce where many are excluded. Digital technologies are critical to an individual's ability to participate in society, and exclusion comes at a high cost.
Building on Josh's assessment of digital disparity, disparity emerges not just from a lack of access to technology, but from the exclusion of skill sharing and building required to maximize these tools. According to the National Skills Coalition, these images, pulled from the report Applying a Racial Equity Lens to Digital Literacy, grasp the disheartening truth that workers of color are disproportionately impacted by digital skill gaps across the United States workforce. This isn't about individual failure. The data shows that these gaps are rooted in structural and historical inequalities stemming from decades of underfunded schools, language barriers, income disparities, and limited access to opportunity directly tied to the restriction and inflation of economic mobility for some and not others.
24 million people in the United States do not have access to affordable high-speed internet. The internet is crucial to our participation in modern society, and exclusion comes with a high cost. The Digital Equity Act combats the rising digital divide by ensuring access to affordable internet throughout the U.S. and tribal territories. The Act identifies 8 covered populations to focus access efforts on. Over 80% of Americans are protected under this Act. As of 2025, there is pressure to have the Act repealed as unconstitutional.
Digital innovation starts with closing the digital divide. The reality of closing this divide lies in identifying under and unserved communities and pinpointing their specific needs. Then we can start to structure programs that provide access, distribute devices, and teach skills. The question is, who is affected most by the divide and who is responsible for spearheading these efforts? In the article from this week titled America's Racial Gap and Big Tech's Closing Window, the authors talk about how Black and Hispanic Americans are at a much bigger disadvantage than their white counterparts. The article also puts forward a suggestion that Big Tech should be funding these programs because Big Tech has the funds and needs the political support. I think Big Tech is a great place to start with funding these programs, but who else is responsible? In my personal experience, I've seen local governments working closely with communities they understand to structure programs to target specific needs. But maybe it's libraries and the expanding roles of librarians who should be undertaking these projects.
When I got inside, I said, hey, I'm looking for a mobile hotspot. And the guy kind of looks at me like, do you have one reserved? And I'm like, I know this sounds crazy, but it says it's one available. So he looks and it is one available, but it's not in service. So he calls the IT guy and it's like, hey, a patron is here. Can we turn this hotspot back on? And the IT guy was like, well, what's the barcode? And he gave it to him and it worked. It's going to take a few hours, but the hotspot is going to be on. I'm so happy about that, but I am sorry there is a crazy wait for these.
Consider the Chicago Public Library featured in this TikTok video providing access to hotspots and Chromebook kits that are available for checkout for up to 3 weeks. When it comes to digital innovation, we have to figure out who is responsible for fixing digital disparities. Digital innovation seeks to bridge the digital divide and plan for digital futures. Digital innovation includes finding ways to provide digital access and skills, as well as facilitating privacy, AI, and other emerging technologies. With librarians at the center of the information world, information professionals have led a lot of the digital innovation efforts we see regularly. When considering digital innovation, we have to consider who is being left behind, who is the most affected, and who are we allowing to take on leadership positions regarding digital innovation.
Before Natalie introduces the latest world sweeping instance of digital innovation and disparity, I want you to recognize that innovation doesn't affect all communities with equity, and sometimes one's innovation is the vehicle to another's disparity. A clear example of this comes from Texas, where jails recently introduced tablet programs for its incarcerated community. On the surface, this appears progressive, with tablets being marketed as ways to improve living conditions, reduce contraband, and support communication with loved ones. While this may be true at times, journalist Pooja Salhotra unveils the smoking mirrors. These tablets come with basic digital services like messaging and video calls that are restricted, surveilled, and behind a paywall. To have access to human connections, families are responsible for paying the minimums to their loved ones in the system. Advocates for this service call this a love tax, a system that monetizes human relationships and turns digital access into yet another form of punishment. And of course, many of the convicted who rely on this love come from disproportionately low income and minoritized communities. So, I ask the librarians who are listening, when we talk about digital access, please know for some that this is a human rights issue, and your innovative ideas must be paired with that information in mind.
One of the new forms of digital innovation that is making its way not only into the library field, but into all workplaces is artificial intelligence, or AI. I'm going to begin by explaining Dan Powick's hype cycle, which takes on the cycle that new technologies make in order to be put into the mainstream, specifically into work environments. He explains that AI is currently in between the third and fourth stage. The third stage is the trough of disillusionment, which is mainly skepticism towards new technologies, limitations, and challenges, which can be perfectly exampled by Violet B. Fox's quote from her Zine that was published a year ago. Now is when the palatability of AI is being tested. How easily will we accept AI into our jobs? Now is the time to put on the brakes, individually and societally. It is moving from this sort of stage of disillusionment and skepticism towards a slope of enlightenment, which focuses on the practical application of this new technology and understanding the benefits that can emerge from incorporating it. The Clairvit study perfectly encapsulates the transition between these two stages. It establishes that there is an increase in librarians exploring AI. 67% of respondents that were part of this study were currently exploring or implementing AI. And Dan Powick also explains that there are multiple benefits and downsides to using AI, specifically in a multicultural and diverse work environment. Two of the benefits that I have highlighted are that AI can provide metrics for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and identify zones of improvement for leadership and administration. And the main downside to using AI are the biases that can come with it, both of the AI itself and the limitations that it has because it is man-made, but also the biases that the leader, workplace, or library has that is incorporating it. Now that I have briefly discussed where libraries are in implementing AI into the field, I will now go into how leaders should think about and consider of AI before and when they are incorporating it into the workplace. I will begin by bringing up an issue that Violet B. Fox introduces into her published Zine, which is what she coins as anti-worker technology, in which AI is replacing workers and it is adding to the harms of an inequitable system, especially for diverse workers and staff. I found Laura McLean's TED Talk to be an amazing source to bring into discussion with Violet B. Fox's concerns, primarily in how leadership should be adaptable to the uses of AI and be inclusive in the decision making that affects their workers, their users, and the environment of the workplace. Inclusive leadership involves humanity, and it is thinking about the people that are not in the room when decisions are being made. In terms of the issues that are facing libraries right now, I found AI literacy and training to be one of the most prevalent issues facing multicultural and diverse work environments today. According to the Clarivate study, 56% of respondents that were currently implementing AI reported having no structured support for learning, and only 12% had formal AI training or onboarding. The American Library Association provided an amazing framework to begin for library workers to think about AI competency and trainings within the library field. Their framework begins with the mindset that should be had by workers when approaching training for AI. The two that I have highlighted are skepticism and collaboration. Collaboration is about seeking diverse perspectives, which is important in the selection of AI for software. And it should also be noted that many libraries do not get a choice in when, how, and which AIs are incorporated into library software and resources. This is why the 4 competencies that the ALA provides are important to meet and consider for library workers when faced with deciding on AI and or with dealing with an AI that has been chosen for them. Leadership in libraries when it comes to AI must be adaptable and ready to learn new development styles and trainings. I will now hand it over to Josh.
Creating educational technologies does not just fulfill a need, but actively changes our values and relationships. While edtech companies appear to take an inclusive and progressive perspective, they are still beholden to capital. The requirement to extract value for continued growth often puts edtech at odds with the needs of educational communities. Regulation can help control the power of edtech, but often doesn't go far enough. We must confront these problems with community and people-focused actions. These perspectives include reparations, which enables us to recognize, acknowledge, and make amends for past injustices while committing to assurances that they will never happen again. Sovereignty, which centers Indigenous peoples' control over their data, ensuring Indigenous futures and talk back against the dominant colonial narratives. Care, which directs attention towards vulnerable people and the resources they share as a community. And democratization, which shares power by embracing the greater community through participatory practices centered on equity and inclusion.
Digital innovation and digital disparity then seem to work hand in hand, where digital disparity can lead to digital innovation, which meets the needs of individuals and communities. However, as we've kind of seen in our examples presented today, digital innovation can also lead to disparity in regards to access, inclusion, accessibility, and consideration for literacy. Our group presents 3 questions for everyone to consider, not only right now, but for the future as well. Thank you, and our following slide is a compilation of our references.